My name is Frank Vega. I'm here with John Bannister, my co-host, and some of our core members like Trevor and Ed and Jonathan from the Agile Denver Kanban Community of Practice. And this is, I think, is our first public meetup on Zoom. We've done public meetups before, and in person it's a lot easier. So this is the first time on Zoom. So welcome everybody. If this is your first time, I'm seeing some new faces, so that's good. I'm seeing some past faces like Kevin, so that's good to see you back, Kevin. For those of you who don't know, and if you're new to Agile Denver, I'm assuming most of you know about Agile Denver because you've been able to get on and register in the meetup. But if you don't know, we're one of like, I think 6 or 7 SIGs or community of practices. We started back in 2011, June 2011. And so I think we're probably the longest running one as well. See, what else can I say? We have several members who are former board members of Agile Denver, so we're very familiar with that. And Trevor, I think I'm just going to pick on you because you're the latest of the former. Is there anything from a board of director kind of thing that I should say, we should say for everybody who's on here about Mile High Agile or anything that you can think of?
Only things I can think of right now are the current board is working to do more to help engage the community. So keep an eye out for a lot of things coming up from them. And I know they're working on figuring out Mile High Agile, the conference that we do each year, and what that's going to look like for 2021. It's still going to be probably different than we've done in the past.
Yeah, I know they've done a lot on the website, and they're working on a newsletter. And I think if you go to that website, you can see, for example, links or pointers to all the other different community practices and SIGs as well. So I guarantee you, if this isn't one of interest for you, I'm sure we'll have something else out there that is of interest, and you can go and check their schedules and when they meet and do their meetups as well. Okay, I don't know if there's anything else I really need to say other than I think it's probably about time that I turn this over. As I said earlier, John Bannister is my co-host, my co-organizer, I should say, of the Agile Denver Kanban COP. But I consider Ed, Jonathan, and Trevor as co-hosts as well, since they also put in a lot of time and help make this thing go. With that, John, as I told you earlier, I don't remember the title exactly of your presentation, but with that, I'm going to go ahead and just turn it over to you. You can go ahead and take over the screen and introduce your topic. And well, actually, let me say one last thing. I should say, in our public meetups, we typically go 2 hours. We don't do that now with Zoom calls because many of you are on Zoom calls already for too long. Typically in our normal ones, we would do an hour deep dive like we're going to do today with John's presentation, take a break, and then follow up with a lean coffee. Today, because we're only doing 1 hour, we decided on this one to focus on a presentation that John's going to do. In the future, when we do another public meetup, which you can check our schedule out there on the meetup site, it may be a lean coffee. We'll see. It kind of depends too on if we have a presentation queued up, or if we have somebody requesting maybe a lean coffee. And if you've never been in or participated in lean coffee, you can do a quick Google search on that and see that they're very valuable as well. And we do them often, and we hope to do them at some time soon in public again, face-to-face someday. All right, so John, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then I'll continue to monitor the weight room from my end.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Let me share my screen, and we'll get started here. And there we go. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Everybody can see the screen. So thank you, everybody, for attending. What we're going to go is what this presentation is essentially about, and it's going to be slightly interactive, not as interactive as I'd like it to be. So that's where Trevor Peterson's going to help me out by inputting some of your information into our Trello board, which we'll get to in a few minutes. So the topic today is how to create a team charter utilizing Kanban principles and practices. So that being said, here's the opening slide. The next slide is, well, what is a team charter? So team charter is basically, it's a collaboration within the team of working agreements that a team comes up with to really kind of explicitly put out their purpose, and it allows you to go through very, very, a lot of different aspects of what it does, what it takes to create and run a team. So a typical team charter usually includes, as I mentioned already, the purpose, accountability rights, decision rights, structure, which can include roles and some other things, practices, and metrics. So a team charter also focuses on not on just is on what we do, not versus how we work. It really gives clarity to that team. That being said, so why do a team charter? It helps clarifying the team purpose, as I mentioned. It brings tensions and conflicts out into the open, and it allows the team to have a dialogue with each other on how they'd like to operate in the future. It also focuses on the value added activities versus activities that do not add any value. And then it releases or it can partially remove the ambiguity on who does what and who decides what. And it makes the implicit explicit. So instead of it being out in somebody's head or with people who have been there a long time, it actually puts it down, whether that's, we're going to actually put it on a Trello board, but you could put it in any kind of documentation, where that's a SharePoint site, so on and so forth. So that being said, we're going to move to the Trello board. And okay. So any questions so far about what a team charter is before I move on? Okay. All right. I'm going to give you folks a scenario, and then we're going to pause, and we're going to actually submit questions through these various categories. And we're going to start just like on a Kanban board from left and move right. First thing we're going to do is we're going to look at external outcomes. Some people might even call this a purpose. And I want to give you all a scenario. So the scenario is basically we are one of several software development teams in an organization building a mobile app for users to improve the air quality in their communities. Now, your team probably doesn't do this. This is a scenario that's brought up. Most of us deal with software development that have been in the Kanban COP. Doesn't matter. You can use this for any type of team, whether that's software development or it could be a marketing team. All right. So the first thing I want to do is how we set this up is I put a question out there is why does this team exist and what will it be different? What will be different if we are successful? So what I'm going to have you folks do is in the comment section or in the chat room of the Zoom meeting, you're going to put outcomes, and then what that external outcome can be. And we're going to give everybody about 2-3 minutes to actually put stuff in. Trevor, because Trevor has access to the board, I couldn't get access to everybody at this time. He's going to actually input some of these information in. So he's going to do that in real time. So thank you, Trevor, for doing that. So how I set this up is these chapter sections on the left are also along horizontally, and you can see it. It goes much further. We may not get to all this tonight, but I'll try to at least cover the main concepts. So within that, the first one is outcomes. I put it as external outcomes. If you click on that, you can put a description on what the outcome. So an outcome is a concrete impact this team is going to deliver. They can articulate what will be true when the job is done. Now, you may have a different description, but this is just what I've chose to use and what I was taught originally how to use. So that being said, I'm going to keep a little time, and I'm going to have you folks start inputting. What do you think why does this team exist? So I'll start the timer now. So we'll give you about, let's go with 3 minutes. We may not need all that time. Okay, let's go on right now. So, all right. And if you have any questions, raise your hand. Frank's going to be looking at this. Do you have any questions on what we're going over?
Can you just repeat the scenario again?
Yep, sure, sure. Can you not see my screen, Jonathan? It's right here. It's scenario. It's right.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I didn't see the. I was looking at the wrong spot.
Good question. Very good question. I need a little music like Jeopardy music in the background for people to do this. I'll remember that next time. Another couple more minutes. And as you can see, this updates in real time as Trevor is putting in your comments. So thank you again, Trevor. So I don't even have to refresh this. So that's one of the benefits of using Trello. It's in real time. There are other tools you can use. We're just using Trello. And there are no right and wrong answers on this. So, and you'll find that if you do something like this for a team, do a team charter, like I said, as I mentioned earlier, it's an open dialogue, and you will revisit this. This is not a one and done thing. That's the nice thing about the Trello board. It's always there. So you can just, as long as all your team members have access to Trello or whatever tool you decide to use, you can revisit that, and you just need a link in this case. So it's really, really easy. So less than a minute to go.
Hey, John, I'll just comment right now as people are still writing. I can already see the value in this. It's quite interesting to me. I see parallels, and I know you're probably going to get there, so hopefully I'm not stealing any thunder, but I already see parallels to what you're doing related to like an A3 or the purpose of an A3. So this is pretty awesome to me already.
And you can convert that A3 document, or if anybody has a question what A3 is, you can look it up or just ask Frank what is an A3. You can easily move that into this. And yeah. I'm using Kanban principles and practices. They can be Agile practices, values. They could be Scrum, principles. It could be anything. It could be Lean. I'm just using Kanban. Oh, there's the timer. All right. Is anybody still writing? Okay. All right. Okay. We're going to go through these. A lot of these are going to be very similar, I'm sure, but I'm just going to read through them. Okay. So the first one, to help improve outcome, community, or air quality. Second one is to improve the air quality in the local community. Air quality is measurably improved. Engage the community to improve air quality. Mobile app contributes to improve air quality. So, and awareness of air quality in levels of community. I apologize if I'm not saying these correctly. Visibility of air quality to communicate via social media technology. There's an interesting spin on there. So I didn't even mention that in the scenario. Somebody just came up with that. So that's great. That's great. Awareness of air quality challenge and opportunities are known by the public. And collect data to validate improvements in air quality. Users are aware of the current air quality and how to improve it. Organization recognized as contributing to air quality. Shared understanding of what improvement to the air quality is. So once you can take all these things and a lot of these, oh, go ahead.
Oh boy, Stanley, let's get you some food.
What was that? Or did somebody not mute their mic? Okay, somebody not mute their mic. All right. I thought I heard a question. You could take all these and just combine them into one. And once you're done with the outcomes, I think I have this set up, is I have an attachment, and this is actually going to go to another team, but you can see what happens. So in this card, you should be able to answer yes to every prompt below for the outcome. And this is the 3 prompts that I had. does the purpose that we chose, we put many purposes in there, but if we decided on one, does it give a clear picture of what success looks like? Okay. And these are just ways of verifying or validating your purpose. Second one is, if a new member joined, would it tell the team what this team does without further explanation? So generally what this is, it not only helps with the current team members, but any team members you onboard. And having just recently added somebody fully remote, because most of us are all working remote right now, it's very difficult for them to come up to speed, and a team charter can help with that. All right. And then the last bullet point or check mark, you can actually go in and check off these boxes if you actually do it. If a client or partner read the statement, would they understand what we do and its value? So that's what I have listed. You could put whatever you want on this. And I actually need to go back to the proper board because I got some of these linked because I support many different teams. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, or would like to elaborate a little bit more on this particular section? I know I'm going through this pretty quickly on the outcomes or the purpose for a team.
The only thing I would comment, John, is I'm like I said, I'm not just blowing smoke here. I'm already thoroughly impressed in how much it links to other areas of lean thinking, theory of constraints that I'm seeing. So this is, as you've told me earlier, this is a synthesis of a lot of different related but supporting concepts. And I love it that I'm seeing it right in here very clearly already. So.
Right. And it is more of a framework. And like I said, it's very adaptable. So, and then focus more on people centric versus process centric. At least that's my opinion. I'll go into the resources that I used and where I've gotten most of this information, but I'll do that towards the end. So that being said, we're going to move to the next column, essentially, which is principles. And the principle is what fundamentals beliefs should guide how we work together. Now, I've listed in here the Kanban principles, and I may be calling out on Frank and Jonathan and some other folks about these principles. So I'm just going to read them real quick. There's basically 4 core ones, at least the most recent thing that I've looked up online, which was, I think, May of this year. So you have, start with what you do now. Okay. Agree to pursue, the next one is agree to pursue incremental evolutionary change. Third one is respect the current process, roles, responsibilities, and titles. And then last one is encourage acts of leadership at all levels in your organization. So starting with that first principle, start with what you do now. Does that make sense to anybody? Does anybody need any clarification on what that means? Okay, all right.
I'm gonna pull Alex into this. Alex, I have to pull you in on this one. You know, I attended the Heart of Agile just a couple of days ago, and I love that. Start with what you do now. And Alex, I don't know if you want to just comment about Alistair's how to get started from his from that PDF. Was a very similar message, maybe different words. Do you remember those specifically?
Yeah, so the Heart of Agile, for those of you familiar, has 4 imperatives with humanity at the center.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's for practitioners that have been doing Agile for a long time, and their mastery is, they're very well experienced. And then once you know all the principles and practices very well, you then recenter on the imperatives. Those imperatives are collaborate, deliver, reflect, and improve. And so that's something we emphasize in all of our teams and in our meetups is how does whatever this topic relate to those imperatives with humanity at the center, compassion and humanity as always a guiding force.
So you could put those right in here too, and I think you would have a similar fit and similar outcome. That's what I was getting at. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, thank you, Alex and Frank. And that's what we're going to do in a little bit. We're actually going to go through the three other principles, but we're going to do that as a group. So these are just Kanban principles, but as Alex mentioned, they have their own principles. And as I mentioned earlier, you have Scrum principles and so on and so forth. So that's really up to you. You're designing this on the fly. But I'm going to move down to the next Kanban principle. So it's degree to pursue incremental and evolutionary change. Does anybody have any questions about that? What that means? Or would like to elaborate on it? Okay. So that could be, to me, that means doing short iterations, small batches, and then testing through the scientific process of looking at it and then constantly iterating on it and delivering small increments of work or value. And that's what it means to me, but it may mean something else to somebody else in this meeting.
We talked about that yesterday or Tuesday too. It's thinking or realizing that some of our actions or activities have to be related to just learning, not always simply delivering. So that came from the heart of Agile too. So
yeah. I
learned, Alex. I was learning.
All right. And then the third one, respect the current processes, roles, responsibilities, and titles. What this means to me, how I kind of understand that is when you go into an organization, you don't go in there and say, tomorrow we're going to do this process this way. Okay. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. You essentially introduce concepts, but if a person says, well, I'm a project manager, this is what I do, they can still be a project manager, but you introduce some of these concepts and kind of nudge or move the needle slightly a little bit. It's not a push, it's more of a pull mentality. So you kind of allow those people to figure that stuff out for themselves. All right. It's more of a coaching aspect, but that's what I get out of it. Maybe somebody else on this call has another opinion. Any other opinions on that particular principle?
This may be a tangent, but I'm curious how that relates to, for instance, safety culture. If you use an existing structure in place, sometimes that means that, HIPPO, only the highest paid person or the project manager is going to talk in a room. Everyone's too afraid to say anything. Mm-hmm. So you respect the current roles. You have to balance that with having the team working on this together and make sure you get ideas from everywhere. So I don't know if we want to go down that rabbit hole. It's probably not too relevant here, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very good point, Alex. And you said it right off the bat. It's a balance. So what you do is when you're in an organization, changing culture is extremely difficult. I'm in a very difficult situation with the organization that I work for. It's more old school versus they're trying to push new things, but there's a lot of resistance and change is hard. I'm not saying it's a silver bullet, and it's not. It's just something you have to work at, and that goes back to that second principle. You have to incremental evolutionary change. The problem is it's kind of painful to do it that way, but what it is, it also allows people to absorb it more easily instead of just being pushed on a person. Because when you push stuff on people rebel. And in my experience, that's kind of where I see it.
Alex, the way I always kind of read that or interpreted it was, you wouldn't take a traditional PMO shop and say we're doing Agile and change all of the PMs into Scrum Masters and just say this is your new job now, or take somebody who's been whatever, maybe handling 6 or 7 roles and just like strip them down to whatever analyst or something, because that's their official title. Like, you want to respect everything that's already going on and acknowledge it. And then to what John was saying, by using that incremental change, then you can kind of transition those roles or the process or things like that. But I know, like right now I'm doing a lot of work with trying to adjust process, and some like a coach or two who's a bit more aggressive and wants to kind of say like, we need to shake everything up. We need to completely toss this and do a 2-day PI planning. And I'm like, well, that might be too much to swallow at once, and you may get a negative reaction. So let's like respect what they're doing right now and look for the good, and try to, like, as Woody Zool says about mob programming, like up the good. And then we can try to, oh, now you're getting more benefit. Let's maybe try to expand this to 10 hours instead of 4 hours, like split across 2 things like that. Because that's how I've always looked at that particular principle.
All right. Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, John.
We're going to move on to the next one. Encourage acts of leadership at all levels in your organization. That should be, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that particular principle? Okay. Doesn't sound like it. So, all right. So now we're going to go to the exercise. Again, this time you're just going to put principles, colon, and then what fundamental beliefs should guide how we work. And as I mentioned or showed in the last one, you can click on the principle cards. And this is basically what a principle is. It's a phrase, statement that highlights a value, belief, or truth that can be leveraged to make decisions or shape behaviors. And I'm going to keep this up. I'm not going to read through this whole thing. But if you folks, I'll give you 2 minutes, put in some principles that you in our team think that we should abide by, or at least think about. So I'm starting the timer now. We're going to go for 2 minutes this time. Here we go. And maybe I'll talk a little bit about why you folks are writing this. So example of principles for effective self-managing teams. So in this scenario, what I've taken from this is, if we were perfect, we would be organized how we would work. Start small, move fast, use data versus theory to steer how we work and what we work on. Sense and respond as the environment changes. So you could say that I'd like to say more being proactive versus reactive. So I may actually change that in the future. And then the other kind of bullet point here is empower every member to evolve how we work. So really want this to be a collaborative experience. It shouldn't be coming directly from the management of the team. Of course, you have to play the political game sometimes in certain situations, but ideally, the team is governing how they work, not specifically management. And then the last thing here, learn by doing, and it should be a comma in there, safe to try experiments. Okay, so I believe in an experimental culture. That's how I look at things. Let's run the experiment, evaluate it later. That's kind of the principle that I look at. But again, you may have another principle. So that being said, we got another about 20 more seconds to add some more comments. All right, there it is. Okay, so here's some of the principles. I'm going to read through these pretty quickly. Work at a sustainable pace. Always remember that we are a team. Okay. All right. Us versus the problem instead of us versus them. Listen first. Manage the work, not the workers. Start stopping. Stop starting. Okay. Could anybody who put start stopping, stop starting?
Maybe I wrote that wrong. Start stopping, stop starting. No, I think that's right. I always forget it and twist them around. That's about finishing what's already in progress before we keep pulling in more work. So start stopping, stop starting. Okay. All right. Thank you, Frank. Then the next one is use scientific data to make decisions and recommendations. Okay. Great. People in addition to process. I know I think it's one of the Agile
principles is essentially people over processes. So they value people. Is that what this person means? Whoever wrote this?
Yep, that's what I was going after.
All right, thank you. All right. Work together for the greater good. Okay, who was it? Whose was this?
That's Bobby.
Hi, Bobby. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Just the concept of working collaboratively, not focusing on one, your single piece of the pie or the task at hand that you're working on. It's the collective solution that you're providing to your user.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Bobby. All right. Meet others where they are. That kind of goes a little bit with respect the current process and rules, responsibilities, and titles. At least that's how I'm interpreting that. If I'm incorrect, please let me know. Then we have knowledge is meant to be shared, not hoarded. That's a great one, by the way. I like that one a lot. And then importance of community, help and understand, help. I can't read the whole thing on that card. Whose was this? Importance of community.
That was Kristen.
Kristen, okay. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that one?
So I guess I was just thinking of the team and how to motivate them and having them think about how important their community is.
Okay.
And then helping them understand the data, because if they don't understand what they're looking at or what the end result is, it's really hard for the end users to make sense of it all. And I struggle with this every day in my job. People are just like, get to the end, get to the end. It's like, but you have to understand what the issue is. We don't care what the issue is. How are we going to fix it? It's like, well, we can't fix it if you guys don't understand. So it's like so if it's an app to help, with the quality of the community, then we need to make sure that we're always thinking of the community and how to help them understand what we're doing.
So Kristen, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth. So would you say probably focus in on the problem versus the solution? Could that be a component of this? Really get to know the problem.
Yeah, get to know the problem.
Okay.
Because then when the solution is thrown out there, maybe it doesn't, maybe less people are willing to, put up the hands and want to stop the new process that's coming.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much. And we have the last one, be transparent. That should be pretty obvious. I know we're getting a little crunch for time and I want to keep it moving. So again, you'd click on principles, and then after we've gone through this exercise, you would click on this card. And again, I have these qualifier questions. Okay. Is it a value, belief, truth you all hold? So that could be taken to the whole group, which is you folks. Will this principle, will this, what did I say, principle? Will this principle help you make decisions? And last one, is it something that you wouldn't compromise? These are three validating questions that I have. You may use something different, but that's generally after you go through all these principles that have been written down. Okay. All right. And again, you can always revisit this stuff. The next thing I'm going to go through is
so John, sorry, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Question. This is Kathy.
Okay.
So the be transparent one you said is pretty obvious, but wouldn't you want to have that documented as a principle, even if it is obvious? I mean,
yes.
So,
I meant to go through it because it's pretty obviously that's what you meant, at least to me. If not.
Oh, the meaning. I got it. So you still want to capture everything that you can.
Yes.
Okay, good. Got it. Thanks.
Thanks for clarifying that. All right. So next thing I'm going to move to is the team accountability.
Hey, John,
yes,
I was going to say that's a perfect example of why you do a team charter. because you can interpret something multiple ways, and that's exactly why we're doing a team charter. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So Kathy, great point. Thanks for bringing that up. But I am gonna move on to this team. I apologize because this really, I know we're not going to get through this whole thing. So the team level accountabilities, they say 3 to 5, but it could be more than this. Ongoing contributions are shared by every member of the team. So that being said, you're like, well, what does that mean, John? You can open this up, or at least, okay. And this is kind of what it means by the accountabilities. So ongoing tasks that the team is formally agreeing to do. So this is team level, not individual role tasks. So that being said, this time we're going to go a little shorter. We're going to give everybody a minute to go through that. Now I put some practices in this. We're not going to go through all these, but these are the Kanban practices. This is what they used. The practices could actually be another row, but I've lumped them in with accountabilities because it just kind of fits, but maybe kind of doesn't. But again, that's what I did. You may choose to do something different. So again, I'm going to give everybody a minute, and you're going to put, let's do account : and then write what those accountabilities that are shared by every team member. I'm going to give everybody a minute, so we're not going to give you much time on this one. So that being said, the timer is going now. So there we go. All right. And I will talk about a little bit of these things while you folks are writing. So the visualize the workflow and business risks. So part of that is visualize the work. That's exactly what we're doing right now. You may not see this as work as in terms of software code, but you may do that when you use Jira. Okay, it's the same type of visualization. It's showing work moving through a system. All right. And the other practice that Kanban has is to limit the WIP, which is work in progress or process, depending on who you talk to. So really, that is to how I understand it, is how to prevent bottlenecks, or at least manage the flow within there, which is the next practice, manage flow. So you're looking from input to output in the work. All right. And then we've talked about this a little bit. We're already doing this. We're making process explicit. So we're making our team chartering explicit, but it could be other types of processes. And then of course, the iterative implement feedback loops. Scrum uses this, but it's part of a practice within Kanban that we look, run a test, evaluate the test, learn, which I think is a core component of Kanban, even though it's not explicitly said from what I know. And then the last one is improve collaboratively, involve experimentally, using models and the scientific method, which I kind of talked about in the last statement. So let's see what we have. Okay. All right. So here's a team level. Work is always done in pairs, pair programming. That could be certain situations that works really well. But again, this is our team. We decide how we're going to work. So if we're going to do pair program, this is what we're going to decide, yes or no. So thanks for whoever put that in. Contribute to introspection, retrospective. Again, that is, what did we learn? That's great. So identify issues and risks for discussion. This is something that generally doesn't get touched upon a lot of times. What are the risks going into the work? That's kind of where I think sometimes the failings in Agile, they don't address risks very well, in my opinion. But I think now that we've gone through several years of using Agile or applying that methodology, I think it's gotten a lot better. And then the next one is we monitor work item age and swarm on items nearing the service level. I don't know what the E stands for.
Expectation.
Expectation. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Ed. All right. And then meet all Definition of done items. Good. Blockers are elevated immediately. So escalation. Use tools agreed upon. Okay. And we were actually going to go into this, and you can, there's a tool section in this flow that I'll touch upon later. We're not going to get there tonight, but and then raise concerns as soon as possible, which is kind of with the blockers. Share information timely, that kind of goes with that too. And then review workflow, and is it still working as intended? So that kind of can go a little bit with our retrospective, a little bit. Some of these can be combined, obviously. All right. So after you're done with that, you go to this card, okay? And then I have these 4 items, these 5 checkboxes. Does every card identify a specific action? Does every card reflect something all of us need to do? Is there anything listed in this recommendation? And could someone not on our team read some of these? Oh, there's a typo in there. I apologize. Read the accountability and understand what it means without explanation. And then last one I have, does this list reflect the work we want and need to be doing? Okay. And then there's actually some more in here. Is anything listed that we can't control? Is there anything listed that feels more like a general category than a specific action? Again, this is what I've listed. You may put something else to validate what your team level accountabilities would be. All right. So next thing, we're going to move on. This is a big board. So we have team level decision rights. So what decisions or choices should we make collectively as a team? All right. And I'm going to look at this real quick. So I'm going to give everybody a minute to add what decisions rights they want as a team, not as individuals, but as a team. And I started the clock now. Okay. So these are choices that can be made by individuals at the role level. Sorry, that individuals can be at the team level. Sorry, at the team level. I need to fix some of these things, so I apologize.
I hope I got that right, John. I thought you meant team level decisions.
Team level. Yeah, it's written wrong on the card. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, John, I'm just curious. Sometimes when I do things like this with an audience like we're with right now, they go really smoothly and easily because everybody is like, yeah, I kind of get what you're saying and I have some ideas and I'm going to contribute. But sometimes when working with teams, I'll ask a question like, what decisions should we make collectively? And they don't have any ideas, or they want me to give them a ton of examples, which then become their ideas. So I'm curious if you or anyone else on the call, I mean, I know I've tried a variety of things, but I'm curious what people find works for them as far as getting software developer types in particular to answer sort of whimsical questions, let's say, sometimes.
So this is what I would do, and we could do this on Zoom. I didn't do it tonight because of the access to the board. Actually do breakout teams, and you're going to pick who's on what team. So you might have to kind of, how do I say, massage or guide people a little bit. Maybe one example to each team, and then see what they come up with. And once you have them in the breakout rooms of 3-4 people, whatever it is, bring them back together and see what they come up with. So you're leading them a little bit, but you're not doing it for them. And they're also not going to be all the examples. They all got the same examples. So this way they don't hear all the examples. They may hear one of the examples. Right. So, and you can also say, hey, every group needs to come up with at least two. Okay. Which shouldn't be that hard. But I know it depends on the situation. That's what I would do, but I'd like to hear from other folks what they would do.
I actually thought that was a great answer, to be honest with you. before Zoom days, we used to do something we would call the elegant set. That's a technique that Rod Collins showed me how to do. And I'm not sure I've mentioned it or showed the Kanban COP that technique, but it's essentially what you just said, but in face-to-face real time, but you break out in breakouts in a big conference room for the purposes that you just said, John, to make sure that not everybody's just following the leader, if you will. By doing these breakouts, that hippo can only be in one of those breakouts, but the other breakouts, they're not there. So I like that suggestion, and you can do it outside of Zoom too. You don't need to do it in just Zoom.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure. An
All right.
anti-pattern that I tend to fall into a lot, which is question stacking, where I just stack 10 questions that I think will help prompt them and think. And then I realize that's way too many questions. And now I've derailed them more than railing them, I guess.
That's the best in my opinion. So use the acronym KISS, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
We're not going to go through all these because we're getting a little low on time, but you can see the external policies or explicit policies and all these others. So these are decision rights that we want. We're actually, once this is done, then you would go to your validation. And actually, I didn't have any validation questions, so I guess we didn't have to do this. I do have decision rights primers, which explains what decision rights are a little bit. I'm not going to go into this. If anybody has any questions on this, you can ask me about this after the meeting. But it's much lengthy explanation than I gave for decision rights. So literally, we could actually go through this. It could take us 2 hours to go through this, but we're not going to do that. Next column is the metrics, which is what data will tell us if we're healthy, okay, and help us make better decisions. Again, we're not going to go through the whole thing because of time, but here's the description. What data do we use to know we are healthy? What is our feedback loop between the data and ways of working? And really, I wanted people to consider, will these metrics help us steer where we want to go? And do we know what questions each metric will help us answer? Because I've experienced this, and we probably all experienced this, is there's a lot of people are just measuring stuff. I call them dummy metrics, just for the sake of measuring stuff, giving people stuff to do. And really, if they're not driving value, why measure them? I mean, you can collect it, but I think it's just a waste of time in a lot of instances. But that's my opinion. Does anybody have a different opinion on metrics? Okay. All right. Well, we'll move to the next section then. Working agreements. This is how we use tools to communicate, meet, and manage workflow together. Again, I'm not going to go into this too deeply, but you can have these working agreements within the team. They can be linked to this document, as you can see through the various cards. The next component or the category is roles. And this is where you really get into the nitty gritty. And this is when you get into decision rights. So normally if we were running through this this exercise, you would go in and then actually type in what the role is. So it could be somebody's actually going to deliver the software. They're going to package and do that. Somebody's role is to manage meetings or facilitate meetings, so on and so forth. And you have the description of what that role is, and then you can actually put validation questions in terms of the role accountabilities. And then I also have role decision rights. We did team decision rights earlier. This is actually specific to the role. So it makes what is implicit within a team explicit. So there's no confusion. People aren't stepping on toes. And I'm going to move on to the next thing is the operating rhythm. What I mean by operating rhythm is typically meetings. And Kanban uses the term cadences. So you have, I think it's 7 cadences. You can look more up on this online. I'm just going to read them off real quick. Strategy review, risk review, operations review, usually a daily stand-up meeting, replenishment and commitment meeting, service delivery review, delivery planning meeting. We could talk, and we have talked in previous COP meetings just on these cadences. I'm not going to go into this because I want to leave a little bit of time for our closing statements from Frank and the rest of the group. And then there's more cards that I used. I use a lot of these as ways to visually differentiate between the different cards, which are currently all white. You may have, like in the integrated decision making, which I didn't go into, a blue card would be a proposal card, clarifying questions, and they're just color coordinated. And then as I mentioned, when we got done with each one of the columns, we actually had these guidance cards. So we had one for outcomes, principles, accountabilities, so on and so forth. And that is pretty much, in a nutshell, what some of these other things are. I didn't talk about off-ramping and end users, trade-offs, triggers, but I did talk about working agreements. But you can obviously adjust how you want to do a team charter. This is just the way I've done it and the way I was taught how to do it. And I want to give a last kind of a shout out, or at least reference to the folks that I got this from. It was a company called The Ready. It's based on a book called The Brave New Work by Aaron Dignan. If you haven't read it, it's great. The other Kanban stuff I got from David Anderson. This is a great book, primer, if you haven't seen it. It's Kanban, Successful Evolutionary Change for Your Technology Business by David J. Anderson. It's great. There are other resources, but The Ready is really where I got most of this information. And they're actually working with us at Charter and have been instrumental in helping myself and probably Trevor in focusing more on people versus processes. And that being said, that is all I have. So thank you very much for allowing me to present today. So I don't know if there's anything more, Frank, you want to talk before we close out the meeting, or if we need to leave it open.
For those of you who don't know, we try to respect everybody's time. We did say 7 o'clock, so I'm going to wrap it up. Normally, anybody would hang out and we could continue to have conversations. So feel free. At this point in time, I want to thank everybody, especially those of you who are first timers, for showing up. John, I got to thank you. My goodness, this is awesome. I would love to see us when we get back to doing public meetings and a 2-hour meeting. It'd be nice to see a 2-hour meeting doing this with a break in between and actually trying to experiment doing a charter maybe for the COP as an experiment, and then everybody else can come and learn how to do that. So you've exceeded my expectations, just like Ed exceeded my expectations from the last COP meeting. So you guys are doing great. Again, I want to thank everybody for showing up. Feel free to leave, and I hope you'll join us at the next public quarterly meeting. If you're interested in the core membership, reach out to myself or John, and we can give you some information about what it entails to be a core member. But thanks again for everybody coming. John, thanks again. And